Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Hubele, and I want to welcome you to the Coherence Lab. Today, we have a very special gift for ourselves and for all of you as listeners to share about our own experiences right now in this rapidly changing landscape, whether you're looking through a lens of astrology or you're just looking through the lens of the news or you're looking through the gates of human design or gene keys. No doubt you're experiencing some rapid shifts and pivots and the need to be flexible and resilient. And so to do that, we've studied a lot in learning how to support our resiliency through chemotherapy, but the Coherence Lab has taken that a step further and looked at how do we support that in terms of ourselves in the community and holding space for one another and backing that up even more to saying, how do we hold space for ourselves first so that we can then be present for others? And I think that's really going to be our focus today. How do we hold space for ourselves, making sure that we're nurturing ourselves and giving ourselves all the support we need so that when we show up, we take responsibility for our nervous system and how we're showing up for others who are increasingly more dysregulated in different settings, sometimes surprising settings. Sometimes all you need to do is go down for breakfast in the morning to face that dysregulation. So I want to just take a minute and get an opportunity to welcome each one of you that have joined me live for this conversation, and then we'll get started. So let's just introduce yourself, a little bit of your background working with the Coherence Lab. So let's start with you, Tanya.
Okay, thank you. I'm Tanya Renner and always happy to be here. I'm in New Hampshire, and as a practitioner, I practice homeopathy, the chemotherapies, some energy medicine kinds of things, and some coaching. And I'm using lots of different tools, and I'm excited to share them with you.
Great. Thanks, Tanya. Ursula, welcome.
Welcome and thank you for having me here. I'm Ursula. I'm living in Europe, in Bulgaria. I'm German of origin. I'm a transpersonal therapist and family constellation facilitator and trainer. And yeah, I came here, I think a year ago, was invited to join, and I'm learning so much and I'm enjoying it every time, sharing all your experiences and inputs. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
So glad to have you, Ursula. Thanks. Hello, Lois.
Hi, it's nice to be here with everybody today. I'm Lois McNaughton. I'm a developmental coach and a Reiki master, and just working on helping people face challenges in new ways, finding new ways to do that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks. And Janet, welcome.
Thank you. Very nice to be here as always. I'm Janet Kesenick. I live in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I'm a holistic healing practitioner and I also do Akashic Records readings. I'm finding that the work that I share with my clients is what I need for myself. So I look forward to talking about a few of those methodologies and practices.
Great. Thanks, Janet. And Christine.
Thank you. I'm Christine Terrell. I'm an artist. I'm a working creative. But I've also been recently studying the human design system. And so that's a lot of what I have been practicing here in the Coherence Lab.
Yeah. Thanks, Christine. So great. So how we're going to roll this morning with this recording is to take a few moments with each person to share a little bit about their experience in this time right now, and what tools they're using in order um, to ride the waves, I think is the best way to put it, because we can't block it out. We don't want to miss the experience, because that's where our growth and development come and our resilience gets built. But how are you riding the waves? So Tanya, maybe that's a great place to open up. How are you riding the waves today?
Yeah, so you asked a little bit about tools, and I think that's always a really interesting place to go. Um, and what I would say, and I've got plenty of tools, but what I would say is I'm going back to just some really basic ideas that people have shared with me, and I've kind of, embrace and believe, but really don't practice that well. And the first one is that I'm the kind of person who grew up in a household this way, and I embraced it as like, get as much done as possible, do as much as you can, pack it all in. Here's my list. Can I check things off? And a good friend of mine years ago said, pay attention to the white space. And she's a book person, so she was thinking about how things are laid out in a book where you have the black, the doing, the saying, the energy. But she said that the white space is really, really important. And I know I get that basic concept, but I really am trying to apply that throughout the day. So how much in the to-do list, I'm just looking is like, how much white space is there? Am I taking 2 or 3 minutes to get that cup of tea? Or I'm paying more attention to where I'm pausing through the day. And it could be for 2 minutes or it could be for 10 minutes. That is more going inward and not having to do with the world coming at me or me trying to interact with the world. So doing that in different ways and um, paying attention to, like, as I try to play with different ways to create white space or that reflective or that quieter inward throughout the day, I'm paying more attention to my senses. So what did I do visually to change something up and cause, like try to get the nervous system to relax? What am I looking at? What am I doing with my eyes? And then something with smell, something that might relax. And now is a really great time for me, at least, to have that little tiny little crock pot that I have that I put orange in and cloves in and cinnamon in and some pine in and little things that I just try to pay attention to. Oh, that relaxes my nervous system. Something physical, something that, touches me in a different way. And so just trying to hold my nervous system through the senses and really pay attention to that and making sure that I get it throughout the day instead of saying, oh, I got all of this done. Now's my relax time, which will be a half hour. And I think that's really working. And I would say um, something that I learned back in 2016 was how to turn the news off and really not listen or look for 3 days, 4 days. And, if you feel nervous about that, what I did, as I said, just told my husband, I said, look, I'm not gonna engage with the news at all in any way. That meant letting go of programs that regularly put a little news in at the end, or like doing those reels. Meant letting go of that, and it has been a crazy great practice for my nervous system. I mean, people had said that, but I didn't realize the huge impact it was having. And I know what I put into my mouth and what I put into my body matters, but what you put into your eyes and what you put into your ears matters too. And that was something that I wasn't doing as well. I wasn't paying attention to what was coming into my ears, and what was coming in through my eyes. So that's just a sort of a concept or an approach.
Yeah. Tanya, what I'm hearing is it sounds like you're flipping how you organize your days. You're putting in that white space first and then bringing everything else around it. Does that sound about right?
I still have the habit of writing down this gets done, this gets done, this, I still
Sure.
have that. But then I look at it and say, can I rearrange those pieces a little bit?
Okay.
And deliberately putting in a little bit of white space, or just being aware that unit was done. What will come in there as white space as I go? Like, what can I do for white space for these 2 minutes or whatever it is? And I don't put a timer on or anything like that. I just try to feel into it.
Yeah. And Tanya, I have a really interesting question about the news because I think there's a lot of folks out there afraid not to watch the news. How
Oh,
did
I was
you,
too. I
yeah, how
was
did you manage that?
really afraid not to listen. For one, I might be caught by surprise, and that could be dangerous to me. That would create a safety issue for me, or that in a social situation or a business situation, I would be like so out of it that I didn't know something major happened, which did happen, over the years a couple times, but you just say, "Oh, yeah, can you say more about that?" And then you just kind of pick up from there. You don't have to say, "Oh, I had no idea that we just went to war with some country." Like, you know, um, yeah. So it's been fine. And that was, when Trump first got elected, or in 2016 when that election happened. I don't like the way he presents himself. I don't like, his voice gets on my nervous system easily. And that's was the gift of what happened. It taught me how to turn things off and create space and not just have things flow in and flow in and flow in. And I'm also careful with friends and conversation. If things are going to get ramped up around it, you just find a gentle way to, step out or move around or redirect or that kind of thing, and being really aware of, um, I want to stay with the news, but I have it in its box. Like, I didn't know that it was just flowing into me all the time, or I didn't know how it was affecting me. Is that was what I'll say. I didn't know how it was affecting me, and it was really robbing me of me.
Yeah. Tanya, thank you. Thank you. Lois, how about you? How are you navigating these times?
Navigating mostly by trying to be really present, which is like one of the things that's come out of my coaching practice, is just like being able to be present in the moment, not worrying about what happened before or what's coming, but just what's happening now. And just trying to stay in that space, and in that space trying to stay open rather than closing, because they've tremendous with different things that happen is like, oh, I just want to close. I just want to run away or be away from that. And in just staying open in a way that I can be with what's happening, whether I like it or I don't like it. Just trying not to be judgmental about it, but also recognizing that we all react to things. And so having a practice where I look at the things where if I have like anger or a reaction, negative reaction to somebody or something, is that going out for me isn't going to hurt anyone else, that energy will turn into something positive. But the other is that like almost having a semi-permeable membrane around me when I'm out and about, in that if there's stuff coming at me, and not necessarily deliberately, but that it's going to bounce off. And so that it's not going to then get close to me. So it's an old practice I have about an egg of light. And my husband has joked with me because we'll go out and I'll get upset about something, and he'll say, "You forgot to put on your egg today," because you're basically, not giving yourself protection here. And Tanya mentioned pausing, and I do deliberate pausing. There are times like if I'm walking into a situation, or something's going to happen and I don't know, I just stop and I be here in the moment right now and ground myself. And got like just sort of, in some ways, an affirmation of I can deal with whatever. And then in that more grounded space, I enter whatever is going to happen. So it's putting myself in a better place for whatever it is that's going to come, without thinking of ahead, having apprehensive anxiety about what's coming, or then looking back and what I should have done. And then one other thing that's been really helpful, just recently, especially after the election, is talking in groups of people who can just share what's happening for them. And the interesting thing that we've been finding in a couple of these groups is that when we get in and we share in that way, and sort of like we call it pouring in what's bothering us, that as we talk with each other, something really sort of magical happens in the space. And there'll be so a piece of joy will show up, or laughter, or somebody can find the humor in something. And it happened in the space within the group. And it's something that none of us could have done for ourselves. So that's been really helpful.
Lois, it sounds a lot like what we're doing in the Coherence Lab of holding space. Does it feel the same to you?
It is similar. It's not as like we're working on a specific issue with a person in the coherent space, holding the space and allowing things to arrive. And so this is sort of taking that same idea and going, well, let's see what bubbles up in the group, for a little bit like what we're doing today. Okay.
Lois, I want to follow up on one thing, because I think this is something I find challenging. I'm sure others do as well. We've learned through the lens of polyvagal theory. We're either we have states of protection and we have states of connection. But we also can hold these mixed states where we can be protected and connecting. And that's what it sounds like I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. There's that, and we can actually connect this to the idea of boundaries. Is a person can be completely unboundaried or boundaried, right? And if we're in either of those extremes, we're in a place where we can't connect at all with people, or we're so open that we're just flooded over by what's everything that's coming at us. Like when Tanya was talking about watching the news, and then by not watching, there's some boundaries there, right? So that being able to place appropriate, healthy boundaries, so that it isn't so much controlling, but it's like there's a valve that you've got, sort of how much are you taking in, how much are you allowing in, so that there's this, can I close it off a little bit now if I need to, or open it up, so that and control isn't the right word, it's more managing.
Mhm.
Like managing the energy that's coming and going from ourselves.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does anyone have questions or comments on what Lois or Tanya shared before we move on any further? Thoughts that popped up?
Everybody looks thoughtful.
Yeah, Janet?
I really enjoyed and appreciated the white space, Tanya, that you were mentioning, and it reminds me in music there's that same I think in every endeavor. I mean, even in art, visual art, there's probably, yes, the borders, there were the space, or there is space or there isn't. And in music, I remember some famous artist, except I can't remember who it was, but he said, "Oh, the notes I play no better than anybody else. It's the space between the notes where the music really happens."
Hmm.
So he really had that was Arthur Schnabel, I remember now. He had a true appreciation, and I think that it's very true that we are such a back-to-back culture, or maybe I should make an I statement. I'm very on my to-do list, and I deliberately, I've probably shared this before, I deliberately put in nap for 15 minutes on my to-do list so that I will actually, you got to do it if it's on the list. So that's a practice that I use to create space and to honor that space and to have it be deliberate space.
Thanks, Janet. Christine, did you have a comment? Looked like you had leaned forward.
Well, I was just gonna say that, I mean, this is kind of counterintuitive because part of what we're talking about is creating space, so I'm not necessarily wanting to send people back to their smartphones, but there is an app from the Gene Keys guy called the Triple Flame, which is actually an app to train us to pause, which I think a lot of people I know have been using, and it's actually fairly effective. It's kind of that thing that, and other people are pausing at the same time, right? So you're not only pausing for yourself, you're actually joining in this kind of collective pause in a way that I think can be energetically quite powerful. So it just came up as you were both talking about pausing. I'm like, well, I'm not a huge technology person, but this is kind of a cool thing. So.
Wonderful. Great. Great. Well, Janet, let's move this on over to you. Thanks, Lois and Tanya, for those insightful tips. And I'm already making my list here of things to add. So thank you. Janet.
Thank you. It's such a good question, and good questions bring thoughtfulness and mindfulness. So thank you for asking us, how are we experiencing the landscape? How are we finding or beginning to develop coherency and resiliency through this? I think it was your past Saturday newsletter, Lauren, when you said, I don't have words. And I resonated so much with that because I post-election have been pretty much beside myself when I consider what is going on, and lots of words but not really true words to make a change. Makes me very conscious that I have to conduct myself in a way that will help me. And when I get beside myself, that is also code for sort of deer in headlights and freezing up and losing track of my connection and sense of self. What I do in times like that is I try to draw on more divination tools. I decided to, shortly before we came on to this meeting, I thought, I'll ask the runes. I'll see what they have to say for our wisdom today. So the question, it's always important to note what the question is. So the question I asked the runes was, what wisdom and guidance will help and support us at this time? So I put my hand in the rune bag, and the rune that comes out is the second rune, which is a simple X. And it is the Gabo rune, and it means partnership. So the question, what will guide and support us? Partnership. And I thought, well, this is what we're doing here. We are connecting and being in community and partnership. There was symbology for me around the X. X marks the spot. X can be what we do when we are expressing resistance. So that's kind of an interesting protective element, perhaps, or to be conscious of. But an X is one and one. So if we think of partnership, one and another, or whatever, there is a point of intersection. And so just even drawing that X and noting that intersecting point says there is a point of connection, even if the edges of the X are very far away from each other. So I guess I'm thinking about ideology and such at this point. The one piece of text that I'll read to you says, True partnership is achieved only by separate and whole beings who retain their separateness even as they unite. So don't collapse into yourself or into the energy of the union or of the disharmony even, but connect in that way. So this is what I do. I just try to look for outer wisdom through these means of divination that can be helpful and supportive. I think that's what I'll share at this point.
I love that. And Janet, maybe I don't mean to put you on the spot, but for anyone not familiar with runes, can you share a little bit about the background?
Yes, they are I think Nordic
Mhm.
system of little small stones, and there are many stylized versions of them. And I guess there are 25. Yes, there are 25 runes, all with these very simple stick lines on them. And I use the Ralph H. Bloom text that goes along with these. I have found that to be very, very helpful for me. And they are a simple divination tool. Since they have an explanation right there, you can find other explanations and other interpretations online from other sources. But this is the one I started with, and it feels very authentic to me, and I have had great help from it. So it's a simple matter. Where's the bag? In my case, they're all in there, and I mix them around, and then I ask the question, and I put my hand in and feel around until I find the one that says, okay, pick this one. And it's very intriguing to see it. They also, some of them, because their design will have a reverse, and that has a different meaning. This one, it says purposefully, there is no reverse on this one because it's just an X and it's the same upside or down. So that's kind of interesting as well.
Wow. Well, as you were sharing this, Ursula, excuse me, Janet, what I was thinking about is these different forms of divination, but unfortunately, there's a culture we have of using the news as a form of divination. We're looking to the news to tell us what we need to know or feel. And what an excellent opportunity to follow Tanya's tip there and tap into a form of divination. That's just one example. Does anyone else use other examples of types of divination cards or tarot? Lois, do you have some divination tools you tap into?
Yeah, I use tarot cards, and I have several different decks of variety of just different images. And it was like interesting listening to Janet, as that's what comes up for her when she reads the runes. And even like when you have what's written like about a tarot card, it's like a jumping off space to now, where does this take you? Like, what's this bringing up for you when you read that or look at the image? Yeah.
Yeah, but what a different practice than checking the news in the morning, right?
There are wonderful animal spirit guide decks also that I use regularly. I love to pick an animal spirit guide for myself on my birthday or at New Year's time, and I work with those with clients too. And I agree, the news and celebrities have become our wisdom and our leaders, and now our government officials, anyhow. And I think for me, it's very important to disengage from that and to find other means that speak to me as true wisdom. We all have our own relationship with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and talk about that X again because I think that it's really interesting to me because I hadn't really ever thought, Janet, about the one and the one crossing and intersecting, which I think is really fascinating. And it makes me think about this idea of like i- in human design specifically, every gate has a particular energy, right? But when they come together, when two gates on each end make a channel, then there's a third energy, right? And so I think about this X and this partnership thing being, in line with this idea of don't worry alone, right? Like in this moment, we're talking about regulating and stuff, right? Like when we are with somebody else, we are a third energy. We create a third ability, you know, an ability to look at the world in a different way than what either of us can do on our own. So I just think it's an interesting another piece from that divination of like, oh yeah, right? We are better in partnership because we are actually able to see things differently in part, as along with a lot of other things as well. But that in part, I think is really, it was just kind of an interesting take. So thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. And of course, the text goes on and talks about our partnership with each other in human form, but also obviously the partnership with the divine. And that is part of what emerges. That's what emerges when two are gathered, right? Is there's more spirit, there's another dimension as you're describing. Thanks for bringing that up, Christine. That's great. Yeah.
And our partnership with our ancestors who have walked this path before us. Yeah. Speaking of ancestors, let's move on to Ursula. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How are you navigating this time, Ursula?
Well, for me, this whole last month were very interesting because, as most of you know, I spent 2 weeks in the US and I'm just back in Bulgaria since 2 weeks. So jumping from one world into the other. And besides that, going through the whole process of writing my book, which is now ready and it's going to be published in December. And through this, going deeper and deeper and deeper, what is important for me? What do I want to share? What do I want to, speaking dramatically, leave my legacy when I'm not here anymore? And I realized that there are two things. One thing is always the question, is what I'm doing or saying or thinking contributing to separation or to reconciliation? And this can also be within myself. Am I with myself in a struggle of like, oh my God, this can happen, I'm afraid, you know, so where do I put myself in all this, and where do I put my trust in life in this situation? And realizing that in the end, I don't know. Because from the work with the transgenerational and a lot of victim perpetrator dynamics in that work, we see that very often the ones who seem to be the perpetrators are the victims, and the ones who seem to be the good guys are the perpetrators. So allowing things to unfold, getting information, but without falling in the trap of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So I do not listen very much to mainstream media because from what I see and hear from Germany, it's all the same. It's just what they want us to hear. So my husband is more into alternative information, and I just pick up what I feel, okay, that's an interesting, maybe important information. But knowing that it's all information, and it doesn't mean that this is the truth. And it doesn't mean that because something is said, it will happen. Maybe something will happen that is not said at all. So in this space of insecurity, what I feel has created kind of a space of trust, and knowing that the only space that I have power to change is my space, and the space with my husband, with our daughter, with my clients. So we live in a small village in Bulgaria, and I learned through the pandemic, it's better to just be quiet because you never know how others think, and they might be very, very nice. But then because you have just one different opinion, you turn around and they stab the knife in your back. So for me, it is everybody has a reason for being who they are, and that's okay. And I do not have to find a solution. I do not have to find an answer. And I do not have to be perfect. I can just be. And for me, a very good help is always Byron Katie's question. I don't know if some of you might know Byron Katie. When there is a fear or something coming up, do you know 100% that that's true? And if only 1% you are not sure about it, what happens if you believe that's true or that's going to happen or that was meant like that? How will you act? How will you react? But if you allow that little space of doubt, of space for something else to happen, things can change. So this is without trying anything or without trying to change anything, if at the moment it's just experiencing where is this world going? And many things that at the beginning seemed, oh my God, then turned out, okay, maybe, that's something. Or others that at the beginning were like, oh, that's great, that's wonderful. Now turning around and you say, maybe that was not such a good idea. So we never know what's going to happen. We only can know what we are doing now in this space. And yeah, this is my state at the moment.
Thanks, Ursula. Does anyone have a question or comment? Ursula, I have a thought. So I think there's a difference in handling what's happening in the collective than what's happening in our families. When the collective mentality is showing up in our families and it's very different or surprising to us, maybe that's the right word. I'm curious what your thoughts are about, or advice maybe, in folks navigating that, because it's one thing when it's happening out here, it's another thing when it's in the family, within the family system. And, in America right now, we're coming up on American Thanksgiving. Many families get together. That isn't going to be as easy to navigate for some and others. And so what are your thoughts on that coming from your lens?
So I'm in a very lucky position that my husband and then our daughter and I, we are just on the same wavelength. But again, for me, the basic question is, do I contribute to separation or reconciliation? Is my ideological belief or conviction or thoughts or fears more important than the connection with my human fellow?
I think you need to say that twice.
Okay, I try to repeat it. I never know what I said before. Is my ideological belief or conviction or position more important
Yeah.
than my connection with my human fellow.
Yeah.
And the for me, the interesting thing is that if arguments come up, it is not the topic. It is never the argument that we are fighting against each other. It is already something underlying, something between us, something that it might be transgenerational, and it might be just, between, let's say, me and my mother, and I'm still rejecting my mother. I'm still blaming her for something. And then we have this talk about politics or whatever. And then this comes up because there is already the separation. So if we are more conscious and more aware of what's going on, we can learn a lot about that. And every argument, as paradoxical as it might seem, can lead to understanding and peace if you allow it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this was useful, but that's what I feel. Yeah.
I think it's maybe what many of us needed to hear, Ursula. Thank you. Any comments on that, Lois?
It was just with Ursula, it reminded me of a quote from a fellow called Danon Perry that did mediation he did in Northern Ireland, places like that. And he said that conflict is an opportunity for intimacy.
Yeah.
And so looking at like you said, about the fractures in the family getting highlighted by these, and now here's the opportunity for that to arise. But then looking at that, is this actually a chance to get to know each other better? Yeah.
I always say when there are conflicts in a relationship, what happens is we take it personally, we blame the partner. And I always say the partner is not a monster, but they are angels putting their fingers on our deepest wounds, not to hurt us, but to allow us to heal. This is exactly what I think what was expressed in the quote that you shared. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks. Any other comments on that topic? Okay. Yeah, lots to think about there, Ursula. Thank you. And all of you. So beautiful. I love the way this has just kind of progressed around, once again, all the different lenses. It's so lovely. So I'd like to take just a moment to share the tool I've talked about before. And I've had some more insights about it recently. And this is the calendar, the sun transit calendar. And Christine, I may lean on you a minute to clarify a little bit about that when need be, but I'd love to share for a moment how I'm using it and what's working for me. And I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe, Christine, time has no relevance anymore. I had wanted to shift my focus from what was happening out here to what my experience was. And I have found this to be really remarkable, but in the past couple weeks, even more powerful. And the idea is looking at the 5.5 day transits of the sun through. Do you want to help define that a little bit for me, Christine, how it's broken down through the sun's transit through that gate?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a great job. There's, from a human design lens, there's 64 gates that happen throughout the year. And so 5.5 days is about the length of time the sun spends in any one of those gates. And each gate in human design carries a specific energy. Um, and at the astrological level, the gates all fall within a particular astrological sign too that you may all recognize. So those not the if you know anything about astrology, these same sorts of energies exist in the human design system, and this calendar we created kind of talks about each of those specific energies in that 5.5 day time, space, and time.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Um, when I first started using it, I just started recording my experience each day and seeing, then looking at the end of the week, how it aligned. I'm using it differently now. I because the I Ching also plays into this and the lines of the I Ching. And I've been using Hilary Barrett's book. Hilary Barrett and I got to know each other a couple years ago when I was looking at aligning chemotherapy with the I Ching. Who knows, that might come back around. But what happens is each day is one of the lines in the 5.5 days. And Hillary gives a beautiful description. So I'm going to give you a real practical example here. So we have just today, on Thursday, entered gate 34. And gate 34 is the gate of moving from forcing our opinions, our thoughts, our energy on something, moving into strength and majesty. And it's about power, how we use our personal power. And I found it really goosebumpy to realize that that's what we were talking about today, is how we each will choose in this landscape to use our own personal power. And what I just want to share with you. So today, line 1 is at this stage, you have plenty of vigorous energy ready to create a strong, lasting pattern. So folks may have noticed today or throughout the day, there's some energy here for you. Yet, much as you like to have things settled, however persuasive the solution may sound, this is not the moment to commit yourself. If you press on without reflection, you'll be in trouble. So this is a time just to feel into this. This is line 1. And then we move through it over the course of the five weeks. So what, I think I just read the wrong line. I did. Thanks. Sorry about that. I'm going to go back because that's interesting. It was about is great vigor and power. And so the changing lines is this. It is the energy there. It's as if you were bouncing on the balls of your feet, full of nervous energy, eager to get underway and start making things happen. But your vision may not be as clear. You know the intensity of your feelings, and I think that's what we're all expressing today. You do not have the same understanding about your changing environment. So understanding the environment over the course of the next few days will be important. But what I've done with the help of this book, the I Ching Guide by Hilary Barrett, is go through with each day and know the changing energy. And what I've come to find after doing this for several months is this simple concept. There is a gift here for us every 5.5 days, and it comes through lessons. And the closer we can get to that gift, the more we're able to receive it. And it will come in conflict, and it almost always does in the beginning of that 5.5 day transit. There's someone that upsets you or a situation that disappoints you, and you think, oh, what's this all about? And by the end of the 5.5 days, you know what it's about. Coherence has been gained of all the pieces. And when we move through that period of 5.5 days, we'll revisit it again next year. This is the beautiful thing. And it's like layers of icing on a cake, right? Here's this layer, how thick do you want to lay it on? And we can keep going. And with each opportunity, it is just that. And rather than focusing my attention of, oh my gosh, this is what's happening out here, to turn it and go, oh, here's a gift this week for me. I mean, what a beautiful way of experiencing the time. And it becomes an act of divination too, very much like you've shared, Janet. Just here's the gift. What does that mean for me? And it's revealed over the 5.5 weeks. So Christine had put together a really cool 5.5 day calendar download. And I have been using it. Gosh, Christine, I think we started it back in July, right? Could have been, yeah. And what I thought, how I would use it in the beginning and how I'm using it now is very different. But I want to invite you. I think it's another tool and another practice to not see our focus out there. However, at the same time, what's really cool about this is everyone in the collective is experiencing it too. It's just not me, right? So then you begin to see, oh, there's this, and you might see the collective in your family, you might see it in your community or with your neighbors. And that's what I'd like to offer up.
Yeah, I like that because it actually talks about a bit of what I was going to talk about, which is, this really key piece from a human design lens, which is being in response, right? And we are all in response all the time, in part because of the world that we live in, right? There's always something coming at us, around us, being in our energy, right? Or we are in the energy of other things all the time. And I think the tricky part is recognizing when we're in response and when we're in reaction, right? And so I think this tool, this calendar tool, is another way of like pausing, like everybody was talking about, right? Taking a breath, as Ursula was saying, am I in connection here? Am I in reconciliation or am I in separation, right? Like what is the response here? Not the reaction, not the, like my nervous system is now triggered, right? Like, can I be in response? Because that is our true nature, right? Like this gate 34 that you were talking about, Lauren, it's in our sacral center. It's in our response center, right? And it relates very heavily to this idea of responsibility, right? The ability to respond, right? And so I think about all of these things together as like, can I pause enough in this moment when I want to react to something that somebody's saying or to something something's happening to me and not react? Can I wait, give myself a beat, and actually listen to that inner knowing and be in response, right? And it's a lot harder than we think, right? But it always gets me back to this Carl Jung quote about you have to make the unconscious conscious or it will control your life and you will call it fate, right? So all of what we've been talking about today is about awareness and consciousness, right? Can we give ourselves a moment of time to bring our awareness front and center, be conscious about how we're responding, and respond from that place of inner wisdom and not from that place of disorder and dysregulation. So there's that. And then my other thing I was going to say was this thing about creating, right? Being in a state of curiosity all the time. And we all know this, right? Can we be curious about this thing as opposed to in resistance to this thing? And this is just a very practical thing where I feel like whenever we're in a state or in a place where we're feeling, not well or not resourced, excuse me, I always recommend people go back to using their hands, right? Like it's a piece of us that we just don't do enough in our culture. And it isn't about making art or making something that's beautiful or whatever, even just making a cup of tea, right? Just being, intentional about using your hands to make something is just, it's such an important practice. And so any way that anybody can find to pick a pen up and doodle, or pick up some yarn and a knitting needle and knit something to use their hands to reconnect back into themselves, I think is one of the most important things that any of us can do in this time.
Thanks, Christine.
Yeah. Which got way away from your calendar thing, sorry.
No, but I realized I skipped having you share. So is that where you were, the sharing of creativity?
Yeah, yeah, I think
Mhm.
so. I think that that is, and again, like, I really like not this, the way we use creativity in the modern world, that word is just so, we define it very much around this thing of art making, right? Like making beautiful things for others mostly to appreciate, right? It's just this very fraught word, I think. So unfortunately, it's a beautiful word, but when I say go be creative, people are like, oh, I have to go paint a painting, and that's not what I'm saying, right? Right? You are inherently creative. Everything that you do with your hands is a creative act, right? Everything you do with your body is a creative act, right? Dancing, whatever, walking, singing, all of these things. And they're there for you, right? They're not there for anybody else. They're not there as a commodity. They're not there to make a living from. They're there for you, to be connected to you. And then through that, be connected to the other.
And that creativity can go, we can be creative in the kitchen, we can be creative in our gardens, we can be
Yes.
creative in our relationships, even if we're using our hands, right? Yeah, I just came out of a particularly a challenging week where I could easily lose myself and my connection to self. And I planted gardens. And I'm really beginning to think I might always travel with a little trowel and a packet of seeds. And I'm scraping up little urban, plots of land. But you know what? It made me feel so great when I was done. And it doesn't really matter what happens after that. It'll take care of itself.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
Other thoughts as we're closing out this conversation? What's come up for anyone else, or questions? Questions or comments there?
Lauren Pierce had asked in the chat about the calendar. Is that available as a download
Yeah, I
on?
put it on Mighty Networks. Yes,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
in the chat on Mighty Networks. And if anyone listening to this also emails me, well, I'd be happy to send you a PDF. Right now, it just goes up to December, but we'll see where.
Yeah, I actually have the next year's designed mostly. I just need to double check a few things, but that should be ready also fairly soon. So.
Yeah, yeah, great. Okay, anyone have any closing? Oh, Pierce, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you. This was lots of great ideas, lots of great tools, and not just for this time, but for all time. It's just a lot of great ways to work with life and work with all the different energies and experiences we're all having now. And, a lot of these are just tools to work with to lead a full and happy life. So just want to say thank you. And I'm glad the general forest is getting some rain, Lauren.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Piers.
Just want to say have a happy holiday, everyone, for all the holidays, whichever ones you enjoy.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I will take a moment here and wrap this conversation and the recording. I want to thank all of you for sharing, really from that very intimate space of your own vulnerability and what you're coping with on a daily basis. And I hope that, and it will reach all of you in a way that might be just what you need to hear today or the next day. And thank you again for your time.